Would you address the $15 wage issue and how that's impacting us, especially Seattle with the companies?
Because actually, it was the question's on the $15 minimum wage, and it's an excellent one, and it's something. I was actually down in Olympia, and there's a lot of discussion about this right now in Olympia. SeaTac Airport was actually the target of the first initiative, and it was partly because there was a legitimate problem there. In that before the recession, the people who worked on the tarmac, these are people who put fuel in the planes or put the bags in the planes or who worked in the ramps. So these are people behind security lines. Those were jobs with the airlines. And they were airline jobs. And they made probably, and again, don't quote me because I knew this when we were dealing with it in the fall, and I'm not going to have the numbers exactly on the top of my head, but I think they made between 11 and 16 or 12 and $16 an hour with the union as starting out. But the thing was that if you were really a good baggage person or fuel person or whatever, you could move up in the airline company. And there are examples of people who are in executive offices right now in airlines who started out on the tarmac. The recession comes and the airlines, again, are hemorrhaging a lot of money. And so they outsource all those jobs to subcontractors. So they're no longer airline jobs. And they're not making between $12 and $16 an hour. They're making close to minimum wage. So, one, these people are now making less than they did. They have a worse lifestyle because before, when there were airline jobs, especially at SeaTac, our planes tend to come in and out in the morning and then in and out in the afternoon. There's a lull in the middle of the day, just because of our time zone. And so when they work for the airlines, they'd work in the morning on whatever they do, and then the airlines would have them doing something else during the middle of the day, and then they'd go back to work in the tarmac. Well, when they got outsourced, they would have 3 or 4 hours in the morning, nothing for a few hours, and then 3 or 4 hours again in the afternoon. So they're making less. They've got a really weird work schedule, and I think this was the most important thing, they had no upward mobility. Because now if you're a bag person and you're a really good bag person, well, you're a really good bag person. There was nowhere to go. And so there was some real frustration there, and that was the source of this. And so the people who were actually, it was not the people of SeaTac, it was outsiders, came in and put this initiative through, which passed with a few hundred votes. And then the Port of Seattle said, well, you have to understand that can pass for the city of SeaTac, but you don't have jurisdiction over the Port of Seattle or our own government. But we realized we had to deal with this specific issue. And so we did put a new ceiling on our floor, and it gets people up to about $13.56 with benefits. And we're working with the airlines on apprenticeship programs so that the people who are performing well on those can then begin to be hired into the airlines. So we dealt with it in a way. Now, that's not good enough for the people who wanted 15 now, so we're being sued, and the Supreme Court will decide whether we have to do it or not. But that gave life to then the Seattle movement, and you've got a $15 movement in Seattle, and you've seen the first company announcing that they're actually moving to Nevada because they can't do it. I do know of one restaurant that's is shutting down, has an operation in Seattle and in Bellevue, and is shutting down its Seattle operation and just focusing on Bellevue. I don't know that you'll have a lot of them moving out, but I bet you're not going to have a lot of new ones moving in. And so we'll see what this experiment's going to do. The initiative, or the effort right now in Olympia is to go to 12. And the question is, what does that mean? Does that include tips? Does it have preemption? That means that if the state goes to 12, no city or port can go above 12, so that then some would go down. When my 2 cents in this discussion last night is, I don't understand why we have a statewide minimum wage. Because the state is so diverse. For example, in King County, in order to stay off food stamps, you need the sustainability rate is $11.22 an hour. Okay? So I could actually see you could make an argument that you might need to be around this. If you're working 40 hours a week, it would be good to say you're making enough not to be on food stamps. But in Ponderay County, $11.22 an hour is way too much. The current minimum wage is higher than the sustainability rate. And so we've tried to take a King County cost of living and impose it around the state, and I don't think it works very well. So if we're going to raise the minimum wage, and I would argue in King County it needed to be raised, that it be based on something as opposed to just pulling a number out of the air, and have it based on the local economy, whether that's the mean income or the sustainability rate. But that kind of reasoning takes leadership, and it's much easier to issue a press release and say I'm standing with the people, when really what you're going to do is screw over the people you're trying to help. Because if you've got a kid who is graduating from high school with, not really great communication skills, doesn't quite know how to show up on time, and barely got his high school degree, and you've got somebody who's got a degree from a community college and who would never have applied for this entry-level job before, but they will now that you're paying $15, who are you going to hire? And that kid who actually needs that job to learn how to show up on time and to begin to get some basic skills won't get them, because you've actually priced that person out of the market. So I think we've got to be very careful in trying to solve one problem that we don't create new ones.